Same old trouble, villains always knocking at the door. Pretty pictures on the page, but nothing ever stays the same.
Thank you, Vandello, and welcome once again to Graphically Novel. My name is Josh Wasta, aka Fallout Fury, and with me is my Tobias Whale. My systemic racism in our society.
Oh. Wait a minute.
It's Bear.
I feel like them's fighting words.
Them are fighting words.
I was about to go in and be all nice and stuff, and now I'm all flustered. I kind of feel like our other host here is maybe Nefessa Williams, the one that's, we got her finger on the pulse of society. We love her. She hates us.
Only about half the time.
It's the Baronessa, Miss Jennifer Howland.
Thank you.
Woo!
Yeah, well, that actually...
See, I try to be nice.
Well, and that's kind of the...
I tried to be nice for a whole season, and you didn't like it.
You said it creeped you out.
Creepy nice.
Yeah, well, that's true. When he's nice, it's creepy. Well, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce our guests. And today, we have a returning guest, Loki Lott, for joining us again.
Thank God it was you that introduced me and not Wasta.
Right?
Well,
look at what you get.
Loki, come on. I got you.
Thank you for not being live and bringing candy corn again.
No, but you could have bought some sweet vodka.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
I remember your liver crying about that last time I brought it.
Not mine, Wasta's.
Yeah, pretty much, always.
Yeah.
Loki, thank you so much for joining us, and this is, of course, for Black Lightning. I have a couple of caveats before we start, because as we have discussed, first of all, this episode, we are not going to avoid topics such as police brutality, racism, those sorts of things. So if that kind of stuff icks you out, maybe this isn't the episode for you, because we are going to get deep into it. Because, refreshingly, the show gets deep into it.
Right? From the get-go.
I'm out.
You
didn't tell me about that.
Well, speaking of that, the other thing is we did try long and hard and succeeded in finding an actual person of color, since the three hosts of this show are all Caucasian.
Lily-ass white. You should just say it.
I mean, I'm half Hispanic, but
You're the whitest non-white person I know.
I know. My Puerto Rican does not really come
I'm
through.
more tan than you.
It's true. And so we did go out and I had, I don't know why, but I always forget, Loki, that you are half black. I don't know why, because we have talked about most of these issues that we're going to get into. And I don't hold it up to be like, see, we have a black friend. We're
not trying to be like Trump and be like, see my black person?
Right. But it is important to have that representation when we talk about these things. It's the reason we haven't done a Luke Cage episode. Again, but Black Lightning came up. Yeah.
Sorry, I would be down for Luke Cage.
Okay.
Awesome.
We might see you again then.
We might, that might be next season. But this was actually brought to our attention, before Luke Cage. Luke Cage has been on the list since the beginning by Bear, who you ran into this show.
I was just dinking around on Netflix. Just like, okay, what do we got? Like, there's got to be other superhero shows out there. And I came across this, like, Black Lightning. It was Black Lightning. And I put it on, and I started watching it, and I was just like, this is a show that literally has its finger on the pulse of, like, all kinds of, like, racial sentience.
Right,
in
and
this
pressures
country.
and, all sorts.
And I didn't realize, because I don't think in the beginning it was, but like the first 1 or 2 seasons, I don't think were a CW show, and then it
CW
was. Grabbed it.
Okay, so the history is weird. It was made as a Fox show. Fox didn't want it. It reverted back to Warner Brothers, who owns all of the DC properties.
Sure.
DC put it on CW Seed, which was a lot of it was a direct to streaming service. I think the only other show of note on CWC that wasn't on something else first was it was a guy who is immortal. Like if he dies, he comes back in a day, and
So it's Highlander.
kind of
Without swords.
without swords. Yeah, and I don't remember the name of it. It was like Immortal or something like that. But I think that was the only thing that I ever heard that wasn't like it was the dumping ground for a lot of CU stuff.
Yeah.
Like I actually think John Doe was on there for a while.
Probably.
And then was not anymore because CWC doesn't exist.
Yeah. But anyway, so I started watching the show, and I finished the first season, and I was like, guys, we got to put this on the show. And Josh was like, eh.
Well, I said, that's a CW show, right?
And I was like, no.
It was on Netflix. Yeah.
It was on Netflix, and it didn't have the stupid little CW thing in the corner. And I kept watching it, and eventually, yes, like, you do notice the CW element. But, like, it was like they took this really great show, and, like, the CW decided to use its powers. Like, it's just really, especially the first season in general, is just really amazing. The deeper you go, it gets a little more CW every season, but it's still a great show.
I am the unapologetic CW person,
Obviously.
so.
Yeah.
Which I was like, when I was like, why haven't you watched this yet?
Yeah. So, Loki, we kind of sprung this on you, and we're like, hey, here's a show, and here's a comic. By the way, the comic that we're doing is from 2018. It's called Cold Dead Hands.
Actually came out after the first season of the show aired.
Yep. And so it's a retelling. It's kind of a reboot of Black Lightning. But we'll get into that in a second. So, Loki, what'd you think of the show?
I might have the unpopular opinion. I did not like it as much.
Okay.
I don't think that's unpopular.
So far we're split 50-50.
Yep.
What do you, the viewer, think?
Yeah.
All right. The comic was amazing. Like, the comic was absolutely fantastic. Loved it. It hit upon issues in society, and I think it did it well. The TV show was just kind of ridiculous in that, for me, I guess it happened more like second season, where they dropped the N-word. They used the HNIC acronym. And I was just like, it added nothing to the storyline other than to make the person a shittier person.
Listen, can I step on you for a second there, Loki?
You can try. Tobias.
All right. Obviously from a white person's perspective, that was where they dropped that acronym was literally like a conversation between like two black guys that have known each other pretty much their entire lives. And actually, I think if I remember right, were they in the military together? I think that was part of the conversation that they had at that moment.
I believe so. I believe that, the cop and...
Yeah. And so it's kind of one of those things, like, if they want to have those conversations between themselves, run with it. Like...
I guess that's... So we will bring Luke Cage into this then.
Understandably, yes.
Yeah. Because in Luke Cage, the N-word is like every third word.
I'm not saying that, the show can't use the N-word, or the N-word isn't used in shows. I love the Boondocks, and they say it all the time.
Right.
Like
they use it as a comma.
Yes.
Every 10 seconds they use it. I'm just saying, for Black Lightning, reading the comic, that word was not used at all throughout the comic.
Well, also very true.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
And for the show to use it, I think it didn't add anything to the story. Like Tobias Whale in the TV show uses a bunch of different stereotypes to describe people. He's called people Uncle Toms, talking about, people being lazy, and just all these negative stereotypes, which he's a drug dealer. So he's a shitty person already as far as, preying upon society with the drug that he uses, which, fucks people up, turns them into superheroes, sometimes gives them powers, sometimes just kills them. But to add, to have him act like that and have to say racial stereotypes for us to be like, that dude's a bad, shitty person. I mean, he was a bad, shitty person to begin with, the N-word and, the stereotypes didn't add anything to the story or add anything to the character. And then, when you have the two characters, the police officer and Black Lightning talking and, saying HNIC, that I don't think it added anything. It was just someone like, hey, you know what? We need some street cred, so let's throw an N-word in there and let's use an acronym that's overall pretty shitty, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I agree with you on that, but I also think that this is because it's a product of CW expected the audience, the general audience of the CW, and this is my bias. The average audience of the CW are white people, white suburban people.
White suburban.
Right. Who have no experience or access to any other culture than their own. And so when they see a Black person on a TV show, they expect them to behave one of two, as a wealthy, successful actor or athlete, or a street level whatever,
or a rapper.
Yeah, that's going to be spewing an expected stereotypical language.
Now, that being said, I don't know about you guys, but from my own perspective, I don't know, because I am not privy to African American culture, how most people talk to each other. I'm just not, like, maybe they speak like that, maybe they don't. I don't know. Does it come off in the show like, well, are they getting deep and heavy? Is that what this means? Is it just something I don't understand? Okay, they use this acronym, but I'm just like, the thing that I took away from the scene was obviously they were getting serious with each other. The language that they used was less important, other than to convey that they were
having a serious conversation.
Having a very serious conversation, like on the verge of coming to blows.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Iowa, so I have never been in that environment to tell you if that is the typical vernacular that is used, just in a day-to-day. So I guess that's the question to ask is that used? Now, we should be specific, somewhat specific. ER is never used. It's A for the N-word.
Sure. Unless you're really getting...
I did not in the show ever hear ER.
No.
I only heard A. And Luke Cage, again, every third word was ER.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the question. Is it so shocking, or is it unacceptable because it is a CW show and not a Netflix show?
I think that it's not that it's shocking. I think that, like I said, I think that it feels like assumption being made that every person who looks like this talks like.
I mean,
and I felt, I'm sorry, but let me say one quick thing. And I felt like at the beginning, like in the beginning of the first series or season, I was like, this is refreshing. They're not doing. They are showing people as people, like from different walks of life, who behave based on their experience and what they think, not because they're a Black person or because they're a white person or because they're whatever,
Sure.
Sorry, Loki, go ahead.
Oh, no, I apologize. I didn't mean to jump in.
No.
I guess the difference for me, like Luke Cage was kind of set in a grittier atmosphere. I believe he just got out of prison. He hangs out in an, less, basically in kind of a ghetto area. That's,
well, yeah, it's Harlem.
Yeah, it's not like,
it's Harlem. It's technically the original American game.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it's not like, the Black Lightning, that was kind of like suburban area that's not that bad, other than you have crazy drug dealers.
Right. Well, yeah.
And I think that's the point where they kind of try and bridge both sides, because I agree with you and Jen to a point, because in the beginning, like, Jefferson's family kind of feels like, if you just look at his family and the way they interact, kind of feels like the CW wanted to put out Black Mr. Belvedere.
Oh no, it's the Huxtables.
Yeah, okay, I hadn't even thought about that, but yeah, it's the Cosby Show.
2 drink minimum.
They only show like the 2 extremes. They show well-to-do black couple with 2 kids that both have really great jobs and went through a lot of school, and they show
People struggling.
and dealing drugs and violence on the streets.
Right.
Like they show the extremes and nothing in the.
I'm kind of glad you brought that up because it wasn't as apparent. Like in the beginning, in the first season, the Pierce household was like a pretty nice house, and it was pretty like, you know, well appointed, and you got the impression that they were wealthy. And then as the show moved forward, then they're sitting at this kitchen table that's like
The sets changed a lot.
The sets changed
right?
a lot. So as the show progressed, the house started not looking as nice. It was still pretty big, but like the furniture wasn't as nice, and there wasn't art on the walls. There wasn't, you know, it just became more lower middle class as the seasons
becomes
went
a
on.
question of was that a budget choice, or was that an actual like thematic choice?
It wasn't a budget choice because they already had that shit there. A
Right.
budget choice would be not to change it at all.
That's fair.
They changed it when they got rid of the bruh guy. And you're just gonna be like, what? The bruh guy? The bruh guy was the guy at the CW that when they were pitching the show is the guy that says bruh to everybody.
Bruh.
And he was like,
Bruh.
you know what, bruh? This show needs some bruh in it. And then they were like, anytime anybody says bro in there, you can't say bro. It has to be bruh.
Bruh.
You know, and then, Matthew McConaughey started walking out and they're like, hey, dude, we can't afford you.
He's what I thought Pug in She-Hulk was gonna be.
I see.
The
dude
bro,
bro?
Yeah, the dude bro. But
Dude bro
Pug
lawyer.
is just
But no, he's more like a French.
no, he's what do you call the dumb pretty dudes? Shit.
Yeah.
Totally.
Now I forgot. I had the word right in my head.
Yeah, I'm totally blanking on it. But yeah.
He's a himbo.
Himbo, yes. He's an absolute himbo.
But he's not a himbo as
No.
you get it deeper into the series, but that's for another show.
Yes. Wait for next season when we do She-Hulk, because
When
we
we
will
do
probably
She-Hulk.
do She-Hulk and Hulk.
Are we going to
Next
lump
season.
them all together?
And-
'Cause
and
I
No,
think
no,
we're going to
separately.
separate them.
Yeah, and no.
And no slut shaming.
No
'cause-
slut
Yeah.
So after they got rid of bruh guy, that's when they changed the sets because they, maybe the sets were part of bruh guy's ideas. And they're like, all right, he's out, so now we have to change the sets.
Maybe. I don't know, because there is a change, not only in tone, it's about halfway through. It's about halfway through the season when the CW starts to leak in. And
Yes.
Jen and I both noticed it. Where the
Yeah.
drama starts to ramp up, both the daughters have powers at this point, but one of them is like, I hate my powers.
Honestly,
Which I get.
I like that.
I like the
put it
reluctant
in.
hero storyline. That's my jam.
I
But
do
mean,
too,
we
but
all-
do you, come on, I know she's a teenager, and I know she's a reluctant hero, but not with the teenage drama. I mean, come
Still
on,
a
Judy
CW
Bloom,
show.
go home.
But again, I'm still of the opinion that while I really enjoyed this show because, like I said, CW tried to use its powers for good, you still have the extremes of, you got one daughter that was just like, yeah, I got fucking powers, watch me do my fucking SJW shit.
Right.
And the other daughter that's just like, I am a fucking, teen high school queen. If I
just
get
wanna go to the
powers, it
club."
fucks my life up.
Right. I just want to go to the club and
Right?
Yeah.
I just want to go to the club and hang out, and oh my god, I was talking to a dude that deals drugs, and now he's claiming that I'm his bitch, and oh shit.
Well, yes. That is earlier in the season.
That earlier in the season, that's like episode 4 or something. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
earlier in the season.
yeah.
Out of what?
There's 12.
12.
I
Yeah.
think. I guess that's early.
Yeah. And actually, what I did like, so I'm going to extend a little bit of our framework and include the first episode of season 2, because the first episode of season 2 is all the fallout from season 1. But what I will say, as somebody who watches CW shows, that I enjoyed this show doing better, is that the consequences of everything do come around in this show.
Yes.
Because season 2 is when the board comes in and goes, hey, Mr. Principal, here are all the things that have happened at this school, and here are all the things that you or your family have been directly involved in.
Right.
And we need to talk about this. And I did like that. I do like that this show has a through line. Like, it's not like a season
Direct
ends and,
consequences.
and fresh slate. You know, we're going to the tabula rasa to move on, which a lot of shows do. They kind of sweep it under the rug in 5 minutes at the end of the season, and then they start fresh the next season. This show, it is, the first episode is pretty much front to back, all the consequences of the shit you did last year.
Down to, teen queen daughter that found out that her boyfriend is now paralyzed and just stopped going to see him. And
Well, that was the end of the first season, yes.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
And
yes.
then you get into second season and it's just like, hey bitch, I'm back
Right,
and I'm walking and fuck you.
right. Well, that's the end of the first season.
No,
That's what he
I mean,
shows.
take your pick. But
And basically blames his, I
Still.
went evil because you stopped coming to see me, which...
no, he doesn't blame it entirely on that. They actually cover that with Tobias Whale.
Yeah.
About how he moved in and started trying to leave. But
Right.
Okay, what they did get right is Tobias Whale.
Jesus Christ, Tobias Whale.
Loved.
Listen,
loved,
if
loved.
you're gonna do a Kingpin knockoff, and you're going up against a Vincent D'Onofrio, like that actor, which I'm gonna look him up right now. 'Cause
Mark something
Brandon.
the third. Thank you.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh, so good.
Jesus Christ. Well, first of all, in the original,
Oh, Marvin Jones the third.
I'm sorry. Okay,
Yeah.
I knew it was. I had the first 3 letters right.
Black Lightning comic, which Loki and I read from 1970,
Yeah.
Tobias Whale's originally an African American albino.
Yes.
The fact that they found an actor that is actually an African American albino,
Yes.
and his acting chops are so fucking good.
His range. Oh my god.
He's
Yeah.
so good. Like, to the point where, like, we're watching probably the second episode, and because Jen knows somebody that has the same eye disorder that is common amongst African American albinos, where their eye, like, twitches and
Yeah,
moves.
it's also it affects their vision.
Right.
Yeah.
But this actor also has it.
Yeah.
And I mean, so that just adds a really, unless you're looking right at it, you just feel unease
Right.
for some reason
You
until
don't
you're
understand why.
right.
Because he doesn't seem to be looking at anyone.
Right. So good. And unfortunately, the last time we saw him was in a Sprint commercial
I mean,
post Black Lightning.
the man's making money. I'm
That's
happy he's making
yeah.
money.
I liked the actor of Tobias Whale. I liked the way he portrayed him. Other than but the dialogue is what killed me. Using the stereotypical insult. And I realized that he's only reading what was in the script, and
Right.
he didn't write the script. So, I mean, like, his portrayal of the character is fantastic. But the way the character was written, I don't think did as well for me.
Well, think about this though, because and you've been on the show before. No, we don't have to worry about spoilers. Show,
Yeah.
just protecting the comic. But in the TV show, Tobias Whale is pushing 100.
Yes, because
he has been taking something to extend his life.
Yeah.
And-
He was a full-on adult in his 40s, I think.
30s,
30s
40s,
or
yeah.
40s.
When
Jefferson
his
was
dad.
a kid
right.
hiding under the bed.
Right. So I think that this is my interpretation, and it may be whatever, that the writers were trying to show that he was a relic, his language spoke.
Yeah, but I still, if your grandpa says, the N-word, you can't be like, oh, that's just grandpa because he's old and...
No, I
That's
agree.
right. But if you
he is
are
the
your grandpa,
He is the grandpa
Yeah.
at this
Yeah.
point in time.
No, but what Loki's saying is that I'm not excusing it
Well,
in
no,
any
yeah.
way, shape, or form. I'm just wondering if that was the writers trying to say, see, this guy is really old and doesn't, he may be intelligent and understand things that are going on today, but he may not be as in touch with how people talk about other people.
And some of that, admittedly, I mean, I'm going to dip back into our LARP background for a second. Because the people who wanted to play old vampires and use outdated racist language generally were racist people themselves.
Yeah.
Honestly, there's a few that just didn't understand certain things. Like I had, and this was a few years ago, but I had a conversation with somebody at one point in time about, like, me, a white person, having a conversation with another white person when they said a spade is a spade. And I'm like, it's a racist slur. And they were like, no, it's not. No, it's not. And like, hang on. And started Googling. And I'm just like, go ahead, look for it. Oh, it was a racist slur like 70 years ago.
Doesn't mean it's
like,
not now.
Doesn't mean it's not now. Like, well, the person that I was talking about, like, is not old enough to know that it was a racial slur. And I'm like, oh, so listen, you know, if you, what was the phrase that I used was, it was out of Harry Potter. It's like, what's the ghost
throw
name?
books through.
Like, go ahead and throw books at her because she can't feel it.
Right. Which you've said on this show before. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
Have I mentioned that before?
Yeah. Moaning Myrtle.
Moaning Myrtle, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, totally. I get that. I guess the question is, and I agree. I'm coming around to the side, Loki, that you're saying is that we don't need to use it in order to make somebody bad or make a point. Because my thought was, well, is that actually just accurate in that sort of society? But I mean, there's something to be said for, well, why use it at all? You know, because you're just perpetuating that use one way or another.
Right.
There's a line there, and it's hard to know. I mean, as white people, which side of it we should be standing on.
Well, on our side of it, it is never.
Yeah, but I'm saying in the vein of art,
right.
Which side of the line, you know, should we be supporting? Should we be supporting? Is it cultural, and that's the thing that they use? And go ahead, do you, or listen, it shouldn't be in society at all.
Well, and that's our friend Keith, who tried to watch Luke Cage and was like, nope.
Yeah. Well, and I think that there are other, you know, if what I am posing as a potential, if it were the writers trying to show that he was like of another era, there are other ways to do it.
This is true.
There are other, you know, it's like if he's actually from the 20s, then use 20s slang that is not derogatory or diminishing of people or
even if it is, at least use the 20s slang.
Well, but that's what I'm saying, is there are things that you could say that would place you out of modern era that are not derogatory.
Or, you know, you could use like the music he listens to, you know.
Right.
You know, he could still love Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday because that's what he grew up with.
Right.
And that's fair.
And using that music, or he could talk about, you know, to his little lackey, you know, about that time period and just say things have changed since then, you know, in 100 years, and then just move on.
Right.
Without having to use, you know, the stereotypes.
I agree. I completely agree. And just to go back to Luke Cage, one of the things that I really appreciated in that series was the villains, the bad guys, elevated the culture. They were elevating, like, you know, the Basquiat office, you know, the music, and how that was something that brought the community together. It was held up as something that people were proud of. And I feel like that was the bad guys, Black Lightning, were, well, you know, excellent planning. It was kind of penny ante. And then it turned out to not even be, Tobias turned out to be like a lackey.
Yeah, he's middle manager.
Yeah.
And you know what, now, the more that you say that, I'm starting to agree with you more, because, like, if you actually look at, like, a lot of the set construction, anytime that you're around Tobias, that is super modern, super money, super white person.
Yep.
Everything about the sets of his office, where he hangs out, the vehicles that he drives, the suits that he's wearing, don't say I grew up in the 20s and have taste because, well, I've been around this long. It just says white person money.
Well, and I and that's the other side of what I think the writers were trying to do is I think that, and the way he spoke is he is a black man that hates black people.
That's it
And-
right there.
While he's
And
calling other people an Uncle Tom, he is one himself.
Yeah, he hates who he is associated with by birth, basically.
Yeah, and I so
And I have
I'm
another thought, but go ahead.
I've just been doing some quick math. So we've been talking about how he grew up in the 20s.
No, he didn't grow up in the 20s. That was just my example.
Okay.
But he
Because-
obviously grew up
well,
in like the 40s or 50s.
Right.
But going back to when Jefferson's dad dies, I nailed that 60s, 70s at the list.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
But that would make Jefferson 50 years old.
Yes.
Over
I
50
mean,
years old.
Ish.
I don't think he looks over 50.
No, either.
I don't judge people on age anymore because I still get
I mean,
cards for
but
cigarettes,
I mean,
people.
I would place Jefferson probably in his 40s, which means his father died in the 80s.
70s. Yeah.
In the 80s.
Okay.
Because he was 8 or 9 at the time that his father died.
They've got a daughter
Who's in medical?
who is at the end of medical school, from what I understand. So she's 25 to 30.
25 to 30. Well, 25. Yeah, 25 would probably be.
And he went through the military for at least a tour. So he probably didn't have her until he was 25.
Okay. Yeah, so we're looking to 70s. 70s is fine. It's just, to me, it made his father's death scene look like they were in the 40s or 50s.
A little
Honestly. By the way,
I mean-
because he's the old-time newspaper man. Like-
but see, we're also. I mean, I think as a society, we're so burnt out on Snapchat black and white and sepia
Right.
filters that we're just like,
Right.
we
Well, but it
can't
was
judge
also
anymore.
yeah, but it's also like the suits and trilbies and
Right.
and everything else just to me does not say 70s. Doesn't even say 60s. It says 50s or earlier.
But that might have been something that, the costume designers wanted to make it look old, or, have something that was old-timey, maybe to justify the Tobias Whale not having an old-timey set.
Yeah, maybe it's also because
But
we
also
have a
maybe-
lot of cognitive dissonance when it comes to time at this point.
Right.
And maybe it's just our specific age.
1990 was only like 10 years ago.
Right, exactly that. The 80s were 20 years ago.
Right.
There's no
It's-
lies there.
Right, it's just a lot easier to make, if you want to be, oh, this was back, like, you can't have Tobias in what they would wear in, like, Wall Street, in the 1980s,
But
like,
also, let's figure, like, even if this was like the late 70s, early 80s, which is roughly the time it would have happened, maybe the dudes that are the criminals that are coming, as the muscle to come kill his old man haven't bought a suit in 10 or 15 years.
that doesn't hold water because the flashbacks go all the way to, like, Jefferson's office and meeting, or Jefferson's dad's office, meeting with other people, walking on the street, like, and
Okay.
all of it is 50s.
It's been a while since I watched the first season, so yeah, okay.
Yeah, and all in
I'll let that
sepia
roll.
tones and all in, yeah.
We are overlooking one thing, though.
What's that?
He did have the vaccine, so he could be older than what he portrays.
That's right. He
Also
could be
true.
older than he
Yes.
is.
Much like Tobias.
Yep.
Yeah.
True. But, okay, so what was your other thought
My
before I
other
go to
thought
my
was
pin?
That I really wish that now, I'm sure a lot of this was written before Tobias was cast, but the way that they were kind of leaning into he hates people. And
Yeah, it's
they
not
didn't
just
lean-
his own people, it's people.
Hates
but they
everybody.
didn't lean into the fact that he's a fucking albino black man. And he's not, so he doesn't belong to black culture. He doesn't belong to white culture. Nobody accepts him.
There was one episode where he had a little flashback,
Right.
but that was
That's
all the
it.
deeper he got.
Right.
It's like, come on. Like, that was like a perfect thing that you
Right.
could have leaned into
But
so
as far
hard.
as you saw his range. You
Yeah.
saw
Yeah.
that man's range in that episode.
Yes.
You were just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
So,
There's-
go ahead.
There is one group that does like him, though, and that would be the people that want to grind his bones to use for
That's right.
medicinal purposes.
Right.
which was a fantastic threat.
The
That
freaking voodoo people. Yeah.
Yes.
that I forgot the big boss's name, or the bigger
Yeah.
boss's name, used against him.
Right.
I mean, I had totally forgotten about the voodoo people, but it just kind of sounds like if DARPA was speaking in English words.
Yeah. Well, okay. So one of the things that I wanted to bring up was Loki and I read the original 70s comic. The 70s comic is all about...
You sent that to me at like 6. You sent me a message that you had at like 6 o'clock
I
last
said
night.
it
And I was
yesterday.
like, no, I got shit to do, dude.
Black Lightning originally, in his first comic, the 100 were peddling drugs, and that was his. Because that was a big thing in blaxploitation in the 1970s, as we found out when I had all of you watch Black Dynamite.
Listen, I've also seen, like, when I was in college, I watched Dolomite and... What was the other one that came out roughly about the same time as Dolomite?
Blackula?
Well, Blackula is completely different and also wonderfully terrible.
Yes. Anyway, in the comic that we read, it's guns. It's specifically like taking alien tech and putting it into guns and flooding the marketplace with guns. In the TV show, it was this vaccine that they did, that they eventually turned into a drug. But originally it's the vaccine, which is a direct correlation or
it's a chemical derivative.
Right. Well, no,
vaccine.
it's showing the real life Tuskegee syphilis experiment, to which our government infected a bunch of black people with syphilis to see what would happen. So out of the three, here's one of the things that I will give to the show way ahead of time. Like, we've seen a lot of Watchmen brought up Tulsa recently. Same with Lovecraft Country.
Lovecraft Country, so amazing.
Right, bringing up, a lot of black history. I will give this show so much credit because very early on they bring up that this was a direct thing that paralleled the Tuskegee syphilis experiment.
And they mention it more than once about how when black people ain't going to go get no vaccines. They know better than that.
Mm-hmm.
Government's done this shit to them before. Which actually brings up, because you brought up Lovecraft Countries, one of my favorite actors in here is William Catlett. Lala,
yeah,
who is also in Lovecraft Country. Honestly, if we're gonna pick the next James Bond and we're gonna make him a black man,
oh yeah,
William Catlett. Let's put him in.
Yeah, especially if we want to go back to the tradition of lesser known actors picking up Bond and just running with it. Yeah.
Because he's been in a few series. He hasn't been in any major motion picture blockbuster, but man, it's good.
So Loki, out of the three, which did you prefer?
I will have to go with the comic book.
Which one? Because you and I read 70s.
The 90s. The 90s one.
2018. Yeah.
Or the 2018 one, sorry.
Yeah.
It's been a long day.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
I enjoyed that. Kind of the way, the Tobias in that wasn't really like a stereotype throwing around person. He was just a shitty person that was stealing weapons without getting into it more. But it was also just kind of like, it threw me for a couple loops, like with we'll say the aliens.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that randomly show up throughout?
Yeah.
Yes. Jen was the same way.
Not knowing the backstory on that.
Remember, it's still a DC comic. Random shit's still gonna happen.
Well, yes, you still are part of the DCU, which aliens are every third person.
So, that was just kind of surprising to me, having not read a lot of DC comics, where it's just like, what the fuck is that? All right, where does that come in? But they don't really even kind of explain it. They just keep going with it.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm along for the ride.
Yep.
So before I go into further questions, this just came up to me. And I'm going to start with Jen, go to Bear, then to Loki. Did this comic make you more interested in DC as a whole? Because there are a lot of DC elements and world building in this that we have not seen in a lot of the other DC comics.
It's true.
And I'm not sure if that's just because Black Lightning is, to be honest, like a D-level superhero in the DC universe.
Which is fucking sad.
Agreed. But, Jen?
I guess I feel like, and I know I'm in the minority, but it takes me out of the story that I'm getting into when they just randomly reference like big name superheroes.
Other shit that's going on.
Yeah, like, oh yeah, I've worked with Batman before. And Superman, I'm impressed with the Superman exhibit, even though I've met him. It's like, I don't care about that. That takes me out of the story. Like, I understand that they're trying to establish that he lives in this universe, but I'm not a comic book person. So
I think
to me,
we've established that throughout this show, though.
Yeah, it's true.
And I'm going to be interested. I'm going to try to remember to bring this up when we go over Sandman next season.
Okay. I hate it there too.
I know. Bear?
I am actually surprised because when you would like out of all of this, like going through this question actually relates back to the last thing that I just said to Loki, which was, remember, it's a DC comic, which 5 years ago you would have never heard out of my mouth. I would have been like, what does that mean?
Right.
I don't understand.
What's the difference there?
Yeah, like what's the difference? And now I'm looking at other people going, oh, lizard people, don't worry, it's a DC comic. So I feel a little bit like I've grown as a person. It didn't really, like, I didn't feel like the bits and pieces that were relating to the rest of the DC universe didn't really bother me. And actually, I kind of wanted to see, of course, I'm a big cameo person anyways.
Yeah. And there were cameos at the end of this comic.
I mean, yeah, kind of at the end of the comic. But, like...
It wasn't the end of Peacemaker by any means.
I mean, Peacemaker was a different story. Let's face it, like, Peacemaker the show versus Peacemaker the comic are two worlds apart.
This was a lot closer.
That's fair. Of course, this one was only written 4 years ago, too, this comic.
Right.
So, like, I appreciate everything that was in there, and after, me not being a comic book person and, like much like Jen, but becoming a comic book person, a person that's probably, arguably, more open to being a comic book person.
True.
Right? Was not fazed by it. Like, I was just like, I just took it in stride, I rolled with it, and kind of went, I could stand a page worth of flashback to Batman, or a page worth of flashback to...
Right.
Just to see what happened. So, like, out of all of it, like, this comic was good. I didn't have the time to go back and read the other one, because, like I said, you were just like, hey, here's the 70s comic book last night at, like, 7 o'clock, and I was just like, I'm in the middle of something right now, and, yeah, I don't have time between now and then, but...
I mean, no big deal, because we watched Black Dynamite, and it was pretty much...
Black Dynamite was...
It was pretty much very similar to the... If you've seen a blaxploitation movie, it was very similar.
It was a blaxploitation movie. It was basically a combination of a blaxploitation movie and a parody movie of a blaxploitation movie.
Yes,
and it was brilliant.
So
Brilliance
Loki,
and satire.
did this make you more interested in DC?
I guess.
You know, I didn't actually.
You did.
I dodged it, but sorry. Go ahead, Loki.
Oh no! Please go ahead.
No, you're fine. I just wanted to point out that I just dodged it.
All right. Did it make me more interested in DC in general? I've always been interested, so it didn't hurt it, but it didn't help. Like the TV show didn't help, but the comic book, I would be more apt to read this in the future. I thought it was very well done.
Okay. Well, and we will get to that question a little bit. I guess it's just, did this move the needle on you as DC as a whole?
Oh, that's a bad question.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's a good question you can't answer.
It's a bad question that, all right, it's a good question that I can't answer. It didn't move the needle either direction. I mean, I do like DC for, the superheroes they have. The things that do drive me nuts about DC don't drive me as much crazy in Marvel. But this isn't going to be like the comic or TV series that's going to make me be like, DC is number one.
Okay.
I mean, they typically have better TV shows than Marvel, but Marvel's slowly coming up now with amazing TV shows. And, they always had movies that were, if it was a Batman movie, it was okay. If it was like a Justice League, it's going to be horrible. But Marvel, has kind of been coming up with great movies too, so I'm more of a Marvel person than I am DC. But I mean, it's not like I wouldn't read DC or watch DC.
Okay, you got to a point. You started talking, and I was just like, I beg to differ with you, and Josh could see the finger going up of me about to object.
Go ahead.
It was on the show's part.
It was about who had what better shows, and you were just like, DC's got better shows, and I was like, and then you kept going, and I was just like, okay, I'll let that slide.
But you didn't. Okay, so any other topics before we get to our last question? All right.
Yes, but let me think about it. I had something.
Yeah, so did I.
Did you take notes?
I had a note page started, and they are unintelligible.
As much as mine. I was very tired when I was writing stuff, so it's like gibberish.
Personally, I'm a little disappointed that like Black Lightning is not more common. Like I feel like Black Lightning, Thunder, whatever. I don't think the other
She
are
hasn't
actually
named
ever
yet.
named or
Nope.
like the whole setup should be more publicized. I think they're a great combination.
I did love the fact of his alter ego, or his normal person, being, Jefferson, being a teacher in the comic or being the principal,
So that was something that that Jen and I discussed a little bit this morning that I wanted to make sure made it in. In the show, they made him a principal. Anissa was his daughter, so was Jennifer, and he was married or separated. Yeah. In the comic, Anissa's his niece. He's single. He's not married.
Anissa and Jennifer are both his nieces.
Yeah, both his nieces.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I preferred the TV show. I preferred that family dynamic.
I preferred the comic book.
Me too.
And maybe it's just my penchant for like superheroes all have to either be how did She-Hulk put it?
Orphans or
like
like rich playboys
or orphans
or traumatized orphans. Yeah.
Maybe it's my penchant for that, but like it seemed like I just liked the storyline better. Like he still had his moment of growth. He still stopped being and then came back, but like he's not necessarily beholden. And I don't know. Like I guess I don't know if it's the fact that like he's got a family or just the way like I didn't feel like the family played out in the superhero bit the way the writers wrote it. But I don't know. I just go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was about done anyways.
I think for me it was too convenient that his wife, is this amazing doctor that can, try to help these people.
Geneticist.
Neurosurgeon.
Yeah.
Researcher.
Where it's just like, are you kidding me? No, not that she can't do the job or, I'm saying that, anything plays into it. It's just, way too convenient.
Yeah.
Especially for those of you that haven't watched further ahead, and spoiler alert, when you get into season 3, she figures out the
connection.
The wife figures out the vaccine green light drug connection and injects herself and gets powers.
So I preferred the comic because I liked the idea because it talked about how Black Lightning, Jefferson Pierce, how he was embedded in that community. Because it wasn't just his immediate family. It wasn't his wife and kids. It was his nieces. It was his grandmother. It was, he had an extended family within that community. And it wasn't just that he was a pillar of the community. He was part of that community. It was the retired cop that was like a father to him. And his daughter, who is now a cop, who's like a son. They grew up together, and I think that there was more of a true feeling of community in the comic than there was the
for me, that was replaced in the show by the church. His community was the church, and that spread out because all of those people were kind of represented as an extended family because Jennifer was very involved in the church, and they went every Sunday, and the preacher wink wink may know what's going on, and is very involved, and also going into the community and all of the protests and all of those things are driven by the church. I thought that addition in the show gave me what the comic didn't have, which with the comic moved all of the actual family into more of a unit, whereas the extended family was represented by the church.
I felt like it was getting that way. Like, I felt like it was because they started talking about how, like, after the, they talked about the cop bar and how, like, they made, there was a line there, it was like, for just a moment, everyone forgot their as a
It's
family.
a funeral.
And see, I thought
Well, it wasn't the funeral. It was at the cop bar because they're raising a toast.
I thought that the comic did it better just because of the fact that he starts off monologuing to his dead father.
Yeah.
And at the end of the first or second issue, he's monologuing to him again. Like, he's monologues to him like several times and talking about how, I wanted to come back. And it keeps reiterating the fact of coming back to the community. And then they kind of tie those moments in. Mm-hmm. Whereas, like, with, especially like you were saying with the bar where the cops hang out. But for me, in the TV series, I kind of felt that the church was really... Like, I felt that was, like, they were just trying to squeeze in just a black church where people are just going to be doing praise Jesus and wave their hands around and just kind of hand-waving that in there so that they could get something like that in there to represent culture.
And that brings up a really good point. The TV show really segments the community. Comic puts the community together. The TV show talks about, like, that community, that's a black church. White people don't go to that church. In the comic, they're the community is black, white, Asian, whatever. And I feel like that was a better representation of what a church.
Wasn't that also... Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. I was just... Whatever. Go ahead.
Roll with you.
Yeah, but wasn't that also mentioned in the comic that, they welcomed everybody
Yes.
in?
Yes.
And they made a point of mentioning that.
Yeah.
But yeah, recalling the TV show, I don't think there was anybody but a person of color in the church.
Right.
That I can recall.
Right.
But I also didn't examine the scene,
Right. Well, except for the white Italian tailor dude, who I still think is a bad guy.
I mean, they're trying to put him as a redeemed guy.
No, he's still a bad guy.
I mean,
Jen just doesn't like.
He's a bad guy.
It's because he's Peter Cambini, because
Yeah.
she doesn't like Italian.
Oh my God. The only thing I could think of when I saw him and when he's talking to Jefferson was like, I kept having flashbacks of him as Dexter's father talking to Dexter.
Was he Dexter's father?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh,
No.
Jen hasn't seen much of Dexter.
I haven't seen much of that.
just kept
Spoiler
thinking in my
alert.
head. I just kept thinking in my head every time I saw him that he's the Wish.com version of Giles from Buffy.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
That reminded me. Well, that
Wait.
didn't, but something
I was gonna
reminded
say
me.
this did?
No.
Speaking of Wish.com, Josh, now we know where your present's from for Christmas.
The thing that the show really disappointed me in, and I want to see where it goes, and maybe you can tell me because that I'm not watching this show just to find out, is when they killed the funeral director. I was like, I want to know where this voodoo zombie resurrection shit is going, and they don't really.
Nowhere.
I mean, except for
So the funeral director
Lala.
is another middle management person.
right, she's dead.
She doesn't.
Right,
from
but
I
what she
remember.
was doing with the bodies, like the dead people were coming in, she was doing something to them, and they were coming back.
I don't remember. Oh, it's been so. I rewatched season 1 and a couple episodes into season 2, like probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, knowing this episode was coming up. But I don't really think they cover it again until.
What's happening to Lala? How did he come back?
Yeah, that's
so
the
that
thing
was her.
is-
She did that to him. You see her doing to another person, another body on the table that she did to Lala, and then Lala comes back.
Okay, then I'll have to go back and watch, but I
Yeah.
don't think they
I don't
cover
remember.
it again. I think Lala is just
And that's
now.
bullshit. Fucking CW.
Yeah. Lala is just now the fucking.
Give me my spooky shit.
He's just the Highlander with a gun that gets dead people tattooed on his chest after he kills them.
Don't you all? Or, I mean, gee, that's weird. I did have one thing to say.
Go ahead.
The TV show, the costume drove me fucking nuts because it was a shitty Superman disguise. I'm just
Yep.
gonna put on some glasses,
Yep.
and then I'm gonna Batman my voice, and nobody's gonna notice the distinct gentleman that is pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
I did
with
notice
a-
that as
with a
well.
dis- with a distinct kind of beard.
Like the
And
exact
nobody's
same
gonna-
hairline, the exact same beard line. Yep.
Yeah, and nobody's gonna figure out who he is. I mean,
They can't see it for all the light coming off his chest.
Well, and in the comic, they actually have this whole thing about how his face kind of moves.
Yeah, how he figured out how to do the flash thing with his face.
Yeah,
yeah, and I was gonna bring that up. That in the comic, at least, it's like, okay, that makes sense.
right.
They could have even just mentioned it. They didn't have to do the effect on the TV show. But if they at least said it, it would be like, okay, I can just be like, all right, for the TV show, they just don't want us to get sick from seeing the vibration.
Right.
I mean, at least his daughter went and put on a wig
And
No.
glasses.
and glasses.
Because nobody's gonna recognize your face.
Like in the 70s comic book, Black Lightning puts on like this kind of helmet-ish,
It's glasses.
but it's like
That have an
glasses
afro
with
attached.
Afro. But I mean, his hair, it at least changes his
Now I-
hair.
Now I see why you keep bringing up Black Dynamite.
Yes.
So it would be, at least he would have a different profile slightly, at least hair-wise. So, I mean,
Nefarious Dr. Wu, you done fucked up now.
I never saw that.
You didn't see that part of Black Dynamite?
Oh, that's right.
The nefarious Dr. Wu.
Yeah.
I threw it before I came in the room.
But yeah, that's
You bet your sweet ass and half a titty.
see, that was,
What was the alligator comment?
oh, donuts don't wear
Donuts
alligator
wear
shoes.
shoes.
Donuts don't wear alligator.
Oh, man. All right. So, well, let's go around. Jen,
Yes.
you gonna read this, more of this comic?
I mean, I'm just.
Yeah.
I did. Let's just say I enjoyed the comic more.
Bear?
I'm not going to read more of this comic, but this author who at the afterword wrote about what's his name, wrote to Marvin Jones and was basically like, I am going to write a comic book with an albino as the protagonist since they are so often portrayed as a villain. I want to read that. So if you actually went through the end of this comic book and started talking about it and how he wrote it after the series started airing and how he wrote it, and he even talks about how he sat down with Marvin Jones afterwards and was just like, yeah, I still love this even though you didn't put him in there as an albino, and he promised Marvin Jones that he was going to write another comic where there was an albino as the protagonist / hero.
Cool.
I want to read that.
Crondon.
That would be awesome.
Did he actually write it? I didn't actually.
On the other
do any
hand, I
research.
promised Crondon, the wonderful actor who plays Tobias on the hit, that I'll create a superhero with albinism. Fair's fair.
Crondon.
Yeah, the actor.
Not sure where that came from.
Apparently, the actor's name is Crondon, not Martin.
Oh.
Marvin? Oh no, that's his nickname in quotes. Marvin
Oh.
Crondon Jones.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. Okay. Loki, will you continue to read this comic?
I would be also interested. I'll probably read this comic more, but I'd also be interested in seeing what else comes out from this author. The TV show.
Tony
I-
Isabella, by the way, is the name of the
I
author.
don't think we normally name the author and artist. And I don't think we did.
Yeah.
The TV show. I am not going to finish it. I will. If you guys watch it and come back and tell me, dude, it changed. It is so much better. You have to sit through it. I'll do it.
Loki, I'm going to tell you right now.
I can't
Because
trust
Bears
you.
watched the first 3 seasons.
So-
Look, I can't trust you, Wastas Tobias. If I hear it from Wasta, I'll believe it. But you're just
No, I'm going to tell you.
I'll tell you to watch CW shit.
Yeah, Josh is going to tell you to watch CW shit. I'm going to tell you right now. I've watched the first 3 seasons. Season 4 just came out, and I haven't watched it yet. It only goes more CW from here. So it does not get better. The first season is the best season out of the lot. And if you didn't like that, don't bother with the rest of it.
I did like the second season. I watched part of the second season where you did see the consequences of all the actions, but you also saw it in the police department. You know,
Sure.
the dirty
But-
cops were brought down.
By the time you get to season 3, you're doing a cheap ripoff of Lovecraft Country in the Bayou with a bunch of rednecks and some Lovecraftian shit and the CIA. So I'm gonna guess that season 4 doesn't get any better.
Oh my God. You'll have to tell me.
So for me, by the way, we'll say that the artist is Clayton Henry, the colorist is Pete Panzassis, and the letterer is Josh Reed. I found the comic boring. I just was not a fan of the comic at all.
It definitely didn't hit my top 10, but it wasn't bad. Like, it wasn't something that I was gonna put down until I was done with it.
Yeah, it was pretty surprising. I hate to use this term, but it's pretty bland, pretty milquetoast. I just was not a fan of it. But Loki,
Were you crying so much you weren't a fan of it? Is that what it was?
I was burping is what I was doing.
I want to see Black Lightning meet Preacher that's also decent.
No, Constantine.
Black Lightning.
Which, by the way, announced today.
I was just gonna say, Keanu.
New Keanu Reeves Constantine movies
Woohoo!
coming.
Get the fuck out.
Yes!
I'm here for
That-
it.
Me too.
Yep.
That's
Like,
fucking
he
amazing.
has grown so much as an actor. I am fucking down.
I'm a little sad because I love my Matt Ryan, but yes, I get that you gotta have your movie stars. So
You're gonna cry because Keanu Reeves was my first introduction to Constantine.
well, no, mine too.
No, mine
actually,
too,
yeah.
actually.
So I mean, not that I liked Matt as well for different reasons. Just the different portrayal.
Right.
But I mean, I think Keanu just did an amazing job, and that was such a great movie.
Yeah.
But I mean, the cast was fantastic.
Right. You
Tilda
can't go
Swinton.
wrong with the cast that they put together. So
Who played the devil? Oh, Peter Stormare.
Oh my God.
Oh,
yeah,
Love
Peter
him.
Stormare.
We covered that, and he did one of my top 5 versions of the Devil.
Yep.
It was so good.
Yep. Well, Loki, thank you so much for joining us again today.
Thank you for having me.
This has been fantastic. You would think by now I would learn to have the calendar up to tell
To see
me.
what we're doing next, which is Shang-Chi.
Thank you.
Hey, I was the one that came up with it this time.
Please join us next time when we will be doing Shang.
Okay. Don't do that.
Do not try and do some Tai Chi bullshit while you're like chairs. No, you're not good at it.
But until then, take it away, Vandello.
Come with me, I'll tell a story that you might have heard before. Graphically novel, but the same old trouble. Villains always knocking at the door. Pretty pictures on the page, but nothing ever stays the same. Do 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 do. Come at me, and I'll show you something you ain't never seen before. Right or wrong, or can't we all just get along? My mask is no different than yours. Pretty pictures on the screen, but nothing's ever as it seems. Do 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 do. Hero or villain, loved or hated by millions. Maybe it's wrong, maybe it's right, but you don't want to see